set out to do a compilation CD of bringing each of these artists to do one song. I had no credibility, but I think I was there often enough that they just started like, okay.
Sure.
If you want agents to be attracted to you, you either have to help them earn more money or make their life easier.
Hey, welcome back. Today we have Scot Kellogg with 616 Realty. He started about 11 years ago. It's grown into over 100 agents, and really just looking forward to our conversation today. Welcome, Scot. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, you're welcome. Really been looking forward to hearing more. I know some of your backstory.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us your Marvel origin story or whatever? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Wyoming, Michigan, which when I grew up, it was actually kind of a rural area. It was 60th and Burlingame right before you get to Byron Center.
Okay.
And didn't have many neighbors. And so I think that started me with always wanting to cultivate and bring people together.
Yeah.
Just the loneliness of not having a lot of people around.
Yeah, I can see that. I grew up in a rural area too. I think that, connected with people has been important. I can see how that would make sense. So you went to school. What school did you go to?
Wyoming Rogers.
Okay. I ran there back in the day.
Yeah.
Remember a track meet many moons ago. But so you went to Wyoming Rogers. Did you go to college? You start in business? I think you have some construction building background in the family.
Yeah. So I struggled through high school. And upon graduating from high school, I probably wasn't the person people thought that would go to college, but it was important to my parents, and so I went to the community college back then called the junior college, and I spent 3.5 years at the community college. So that was a long time, okay. And I didn't really know where I was going, what I was doing. I started getting a business degree. At one point, I was going into teaching. And then eventually I turned 21 and I decided, you know what, I've got to start moving this along a little bit. I seen people starting to do stuff around me. And I ended up moving to Chicago to go to college at DePaul University. Lasted there about a half a year and then went over and found the arts and science and music at Columbia College and Art College that I found pretty exciting at the time.
Yeah. So did you take some art music courses?
Well, I love music. At that point, rap music was really the number one. I loved doll music, but was the number one passion. And so I just wanted to be around it. And so at that point, the arts and science and music they were teaching you how to run a record label, also studio engineering. But my real interest, I liked both, but was business. I had that entrepreneurial sense from my dad being a builder and entrepreneur. So I started thinking, oh, this is something I want to get into.
Yeah.
So I started internshipping. I internshipped at A&M Records, which was big at the time when there was big record labels. They had Blues Travelers coming out, Sheryl Crow, so I was in the mailroom, but it was exciting. Lots of free shows. And then I went to a really small record label that someone was trying to promote their kids to be this next great Partridge Family or something of that sort. And learned a lot from the grassroots at that point.
So this is like early 90s?
Yeah.
I'm thinking Sheryl Crow. I'm trying to think of some of the
exactly
that time period. Blues Traveler. Yeah. So you're working. What you said you were in the mailroom at that time.
Yeah.
And taking classes at Columbia.
Yeah. For the internship, I was all still taking classes at Columbia.
So an internship wrapped up. What was next for you? Did you know what you wanted to do then, or?
Well, I was hanging out, especially on off nights. They would be hip hop nights, so Sunday and Monday nights, basically, in these hip hop clubs and rap clubs, and they would be freestyle nights, and I was just totally enthralled and fascinated by what was going on. And I seen all these great artists, and I'm like, wow, most of the music is coming in that genre out of the East and the West Coast. And so I thought, well, someone should put something out here in Chicago. And so that's kind of got me started thinking about doing a record label. And and eventually I moved forward on that.
Okay. So you had the class talking about building a record label.
Yeah.
Then you have these ideas. You have access to the people. So did you actually start something? I mean,
Yeah, I really didn't know that much, but I set out to do a compilation CD of bringing each of these artists to do one song and put a compilation out to kind of showcase what was going on in Chicago at that time. And at these freestyle nights, I'd just go up to these people and like, hey, I'm thinking about putting a record out. And, I had no credibility, but I think I was there often enough that they just started like, okay.
sure.
Yeah. And it's funny, the better artists, I'd like, well, I'm going to need, a song, a tape. We're going to have to go record something otherwise. And the better artists were pretty giving of their stuff. And the ones that weren't as good was like, no, I don't want anyone stealing my beats or any of my stuff. And so they would hold tighter to what they had.
Interesting. Yeah, I found that a couple things in life too. Like you said, hey, you didn't know a lot, but you just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
So that's always been interesting to me. I mean, I see people in every genre of life, and so many great talents often just don't do anything. And then you have the opposite, where somebody that just a novice but just does something blows up. And it's also interesting that the people that weren't as good holding on tight, so they weren't really open to getting things out. I mean, about that time, I read a book years ago about giving stuff away, and really, it used to be more of that, like, hey, don't steal my stuff. But once people started sharing that or letting people rip it off, Napster type things, that's how a lot of bands, individuals grew, because they had a much wider audience. They weren't a paying audience, but in the beginning, they had to, let go of that, and they got so much larger audience.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like real estate.
Yeah.
People need to know, or whatever career you're in, people need to know what you do to be able to use you.
Yeah. So next step. So how did you record back then? I mean, you're talking mid 90s now, maybe. CDs were expensive to record, from my knowledge at that time. But maybe you had different.
I got lucky on that. I found a guy with a recording studio that was pretty talented in this. I don't know if you'd call it a warehouse garage or what it was, but he had a pretty great setup, and he was recording us for, I think, $25 an hour.
Oh,
And
wow.
we got a great rate. We'd come in at different odd hours and different things, but he did a good job for us with that. That was really helpful.
So you put together a CD, have a dozen artists, maybe.
Yeah, we had a dozen artists on it. And I started managing MC Juice was his name.
Okay.
I started managing him, and or he was managing me. I don't know what you call it. I was following him around town.
Yeah.
How about that?
Sure.
And his claim to fame before Eminem was big, that he was one of the only people that ever beat him at Jack the Rapper in a freestyle battle in Atlanta. But really talented freestyle rapper that I was enamored with. And so I was doing that too. That he was pretty unmanageable.
Sure.
But we had a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have only a slight connection, like not the same, but when I lived in California, late 90s, 97-ish probably, I met a guy, Starbucks barista, who was in a band, young guy, Satori Posse, a little throwout from like 27 years ago. He was big on 311. He was he was the lead, and they were great. They play at I think the Roxy down on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, and help promote. And he had kind of asked me, "Hey, you want to be my manager?" Sort of like half joking, but half serious. And I'm like, it crossed my mind at the time. I don't know what that looks like, but it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting. Never moved forward with it, but I think I still have their CD kicking around the house somewhere. But
yeah,
anyway.
I would suggest never to manage artists.
Yeah.
It's pretty thankless. In a sense, it's great. To me, you're there because you love the music, but then you're in a whole side of making sure things go on time and go off in the business. And that's sometimes with art and business and the whole thing. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think one of our previous guests talked a little bit about the same too. It's like sometimes you do something you love, and when you turn it into a business, it's no longer the same. Like you lose a little bit of luster from it. So better to just enjoy it
Yeah.
as a hobby or something like that.
I think that's what I found. I mean, we released the record. It probably took me a year at least to get it together, but I released the album. Got some really nice reviews in the Chicago Tribune, Billboard magazine, and I was distributing it out of my car. I was driving around the south side of Chicago, bringing it to little independent record stores and the bigger ones also, but that were selling candy, pop, and then they would have some tapes or CDs in it.
Yeah.
But really, I just at some point, I was not good at it. I learned a lot. I was not good at bringing people in. I wanted to do it all myself, and I didn't know how to get people involved, and that was a big downfall on that. So I burned out at some point, and what you just made me think of, it was at some point, it's taking away my love for the music, being so involved in putting it out.
Yeah. Now, you think there's something if you would have done differently, maybe hire people or whatever? Like, what'd you learn from that?
Well, I did learn bringing people in, asking for help, um, asking questions, finding mentors. There was a whole lot of business lessons in there that I didn't realize at the time I was learning, but I learned a ton of those things, of the importance of other people.
Yeah. I mean, knowing what I know now, like seeing some of that, like you do a great job with hiring people and staff, surrounding yourself with people that can kind of take care of some of that stuff. So, can clearly see you've learned that. So take us from there. After the record label or the distribution, you moved on. You decided, hey, that's not what you're going to do. What was next?
Well, I moved back to Grand Rapids, and right before I left Chicago, I took I took a 3-week bartending school,
Okay.
and I thought, you know what, entrepreneurial still. I wanted to bring people together and liking to drink. I thought I'm gonna start a bar, and so I took this bartending class where they're really teaching you to make cruise boat drinks, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, you learn a lot in 3 weeks, and then I moved back to Grand Rapids, started interviewing for jobs as a bartender, and the only job I got was in this dive bar, yeah, alcoholic owner. And so I went to work there as my first bar experience, but this could be good. Um, I lasted there about like 3 weeks to a month, and then I got fired. And that was another big life lesson. We didn't really see eye to eye. I really wasn't as good as bartender as I thought. And the rejection of getting fired from this dive bar, I took harder than I probably should have.
Sure.
And actually, after I got fired, the guy that trained me that worked the night shift, I went back and I said, why'd they fire me? It was late. I was drinking. And he goes, why'd you want to work here? And I couldn't answer. Well, I kind of can answer, but he caught me off guard. And then he cut me off and sent me on my way. And so that really always stuck to me is where do you want to be? What's your bigger picture? And I didn't have it at that point in my life. So at that point, my dad offered me a job. He was a home builder, built and sold his own houses. And so I thought he offered me a job, and I thought, why not? I don't have anything else going on. But I really didn't like it. I'm not a home builder. But I half-heartedly put some time in there. But it got me thinking real estate at that point. I thought, boy, I'd really like to sell the houses. And so that nudged me along into getting licensed as a realtor.
Okay. So when is this? What
Well, I got licensed as a realtor in 2001, so
Okay.
late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you just start um, at the family business, or where'd you go as your first? Where'd you hang your hat?
I started at Five Star Real Estate
Okay.
in 2001, and I was still building a little bit because it takes a minute to get going as a
Yeah.
realtor. And I was still getting myself together, getting focused at that point in my life too, of career wise, business. I guess some say I matured late.
We all have our pace. We all have our stuff. Our timing. It's interesting. I was licensed a few years later. Started a small place, really small too. So took a few years to kind of get rolling.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you were there. Did you sell exclusively for the family business? I don't know how big of an operation that was for the
Well,
construction.
no, I sold wherever I could get work. I mean, whoever I could work for. And so that it just varied. But luckily it did help. There was some listings built in there or
Sure.
buyers type stuff. So it was lucky to have that.
So what kind of got you up and running when you finally, when things clicked and you decided, hey, you know, I like what I'm doing. I want to sell more, or I want to start my own brokerage. Like what caused that pivot there?
Well, I mean, I always was a good dreamer. So I always
Mhm.
had thoughts of what I would like to do. And actually, being a broker owner of a company was not one of the things I was thinking.
Mhm.
I just wanted to sell a lot. But my biggest problem was me, really, at that point. And so I started going to therapy. I started working on myself, all the things that I was holding myself back. Um, there was just a whole lot of things that I started working on. And the process was very slow of building, but and that was when in my early 30s I got married. A lot was changing, a lot I was working on, so I felt like I had to get a little bit more serious about what I wanted to become and
Mhm.
do. um, the brokerage part came later because really I was 8 to 10 years. Well, 10 years in, I started the company, but 8 years is probably before I even considered or thought about starting a brokerage. And that was because I was always like, just let me sell a lot, stay out of my way. And I didn't get the value of a broker. I went from one of the biggest companies to a mid-sized company to a very small company. So I got a real flavor of the different companies and the good, the bad, of what everybody does, and worked with some nice people. Um, but at that point, it was like, oh, maybe I could do this. But really, still, my focus was on selling.
Yep. I think that's the common through line for a lot of agents I know too. It's like you kind of bounce around a little bit maybe, or you kind of see, as you progress, stay out of my way. That was my theme, and so many, my agent friends. It's just let me do my thing. I understand keeping with a corporate company brand and, having a level of professionalism, but I kind of want to do me in my way. And that's really what attracted us to 616 even. And, and that you have, some great systems in place, the people around you. It seems like you've taken some of that from each of those different places that you were and
Sure.
implemented some of the things that you thought were really important. And that's what really enjoy about that.
Well, one of the things, I mean, what I realized when I started somewhat early is if you want agents to be attracted to you, you either have to help them earn more money or make their life easier. And our goal was always, or my goal is to see how we can bridge those things together, because there was a difference between what independents were doing and what franchises were doing, and trying to bridge those two things together with great branding, but making a comfortable, affordable place that had what agents needed.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. It's when we left our previous company, several of us came to
Yeah,
616
it was a
at the
it was
time.
a big deal for us when you guys came over.
Yeah, it was a pretty good sized group, and really we were frustrated with sort of the corporate, changes that had come in, added costs, but didn't add value. There wasn't a lot of value, but there was a lot of uh, trust or loyalty, I should just say, with the prior broker who was kind of working his way out of the business. So it was super attractive to see everything you had to offer, and that one of the through lines or mottos that in the branding is work with real, and I think all of us that came over at that same time were like that. Like we just wanted to, hey, be us, build our business with our connections, but have that support. Like there was way more support on both how to make more money and how to be comfortable and have all the resources that we needed. So it was a pretty easy decision, really.
Oh, great. Well, that was a big deal. But yeah, I mean, my staff. I mean, we've got a couple things, and I mean, I try to every day say, how can we make this a little bit better, and improve. And being independent, you make mistakes, you do things right, but you can change when you need to. And we've been good at being self-aware of where our weak points are. A couple of years ago, we hired someone to do social media. We were terribly lacking before that in social media, and she's doing a great job with that. But just always being self-aware of what's missing. What do you need? What do the agents need? And how can you add that? And that's been really good for us.
Yeah, why don't we get into some of kind of what you do offer? I mean, some of the things that I've noticed that I really like is the coaching. Like it's a virtual coaching program, but it's interactive. You can show up and have conversations. You've had accountability groups that are voluntary, where people can come and talk about struggles they're having or marketing ideas and kick ideas around. Like that to me is one of the more valuable things. You have monthly educational, but you have a lot of little things in between. So there's not really a lack of ways to get market knowledge, way to get kick ideas around. Like it's a very collaborative, even compared to the prior place I was at, which was fairly collaborative among agents. It's like people, like I've had so many different agents. I'm out of town, show houses for me. I've done the same for them. There's a lot of interaction between just texting and groups within the company. So those are some of the things that I've found super helpful. What are some of the other things other agents have talked about? Or
Well, I mean, I think the first thing we do is, you mentioned work with real. We understand everybody's different and going to do, when you have 100+ agent, the people do things differently, and so we try to meet people where they're at. Where I've seen other places kind of give the cookie cutter version of what a realtor is, and their people are different, so realtors can be different. You usually attract like people, and they want to work with you. So we try to, instead, if someone comes in and says they're struggling, I don't say you should do this. I ask them what they like doing, and then we try to build out from that. And so that's big, meeting people where they're at and who they are, has been a big one. Amongst bringing on a national coach to stream in and coach us on Mondays, and that's been another big thing to keep us really current on anything in the market. Has been a bonus also.
great. What do you see changing here? You just recently hit over 100 agents, and when I started there, 4 years ago? Time flies. I don't even remember 3-4 years ago. I think you were in the 50s or 60s, low 60s. So doing something right, attracting a lot of people, and growing quickly. Like what's coming up? What's new? What are you excited about in terms of the next phase, or kind of what you got currently going on?
Well, I mean, the growth has been good because, like I said, we've brought on coaching, we brought on a marketing person, social media. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have the growth to offset the cost of that. So the growth's been good. We can pivot into what our agents need more, and what's next. And the real estate market's forever changing, technology's changing, and so just being available and you see more brokerages going cloud-based, being able to meet people with the cloud-based, but also having a presence in town or a staff, like you mentioned, where people can come in and connect, is been big. And so we're going to keep doing all of those things.
Great. Yeah, I think that having that downtown location, great little spot, lots of visibility. I think that's attractive. You've done a nice job like converting it into a comfortable place you can either bring clients or come to meet. One of the other things I thought, you keep up on the branding. Like that was something that, the past brokerage was not good at that. I guess they didn't maybe hire professionals or the right professionals. So I've really been happy with the feel of your branding, and it's out there. It's like, you're not complacent. So it's been great to see that. Anything that maybe you might have done differently? Like what other lessons have you kind of learned along the way here?
Well, I mean, there's probably a lot I would have done differently. The good thing, and it wasn't on purpose, we actually, the first 3 to 5 years, grew fairly slowly. And it wasn't by design. I thought we would start a brokerage and people would come. I had some friends in the industry, and that wasn't the case. I mean, so it was a slow process, but it was probably good. We were really able to get our roots down and start something and build and get prepared. I kind of compare it to like a tree growing. You get those trees that grow really fast, and we've seen companies grow really fast, and then they hit harder times. They don't have those roots in the ground where they can blow over. And we did it slow. We got established, or we learned from our mistakes on a smaller setting, and then in the last 5 years or so, we've really been able to accelerate the growth. But that's because we were ready. We did the work. We put the time in. We were able to build the systems. So that's been good, actually.
Awesome. Any advice you'd give? You give new agents or brokers?
I mean, I would think you have to be fearless in a sense and get out there and do it. You can't pay attention to what others are doing. It's the envy. You look at Facebook, someone sold this, someone did this. The realtors love flexing, and you can get really hard on yourself quickly. And then just be curious. I'm really impressed when people are asking questions. They're thinking about it. You can tell they're going to go places that because they want to soak it all in. They want to learn. They want to get to that next step, and I think that's so important.
I found that you have a mentor program for new agents, and I've been a part of that.
Good at it.
And that's one thing I found, that of the ones that have excelled quickly, they're asking a lot of questions. They're always curious, always looking at different ways to do things, new angles, and they're not afraid to jump in. So I think all of that stuff you just said, I've found to be true in this program so far.
Yeah, I know when I started, I couldn't figure anything out. And but I would go in and I would see someone in the office that closed on a house, and I would go, "Where'd you get that client?" Because I couldn't figure out how to get clients, and whatever they told me, I would try to take that and do the same. So
yeah,
I think it's really important.
Great.
But
I think we've covered quite a bit here. How about we tell people, where can people find you?
Well, 616realty.com. You can find me and all the great agents there. Otherwise, my email, cell phone is all on there. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk to any of you.
Great. Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on, Scott.
Yeah, it's fun.
And,
Thank you, Eldon. This is great.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe if you've enjoyed this podcast.